Hello, hello. My name is JC. I'm a clinical exercise physiologist and cancer exercise specialist. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a home gym for 2026. Now, I am going to try to make this home gym as affordable as possible while giving you the essentials. So, you're going to have everything that you need here. And on top of that, I'm going to give you some opportunities to get a little bit more if you want to, but you're going to get the essentials first. I'm going to give you some honorable mentions and then some accessories that are also good to have. So let's begin. Now, when it comes to a workout routine, especially at home, but any routine at all, you want to have certain movements that you can hit in your workout. So those movements are a vertical push and a vertical press. Sorry, a vertical push and a vertical pull, a horizontal pull and a horizontal push. That's basically all your upper body. So a vertical push is a shoulder press. A horizontal push is a chest press, for example. A vertical pull is a lat pull down. A horizontal pull is a row. So you want to make sure you have those four movements available to you at home. The hardest ones to be able to do is going to be the vertical up pull and the horizontal pull. But we're going to target those with the workout that I'm going to show you or with the exercise equipment that I'm going to show you. Now, for legs or full body, you want to have a swing, some sort of swinging movement, a lunge, a squat, a thrust. You want to be able to do all those exercises. Out of all of those, the harder one to get is going to be the swing. And depending on where do you live and what you have accessible to you, a lunge might be the second one. But other than that, the others are pretty simple to figure out. And then you want to train your core, right? So you want to be able to train your core standing up and on the ground. So those are all the movements that you want to make sure that when you're working out at home, you are able to hit. Now, you can do that with about less than 10 items. And 10 might sound like a big number, but I just kind of threw a random number there because I almost included everything. But with the key items, you're going to be able to hit every single thing. Now, I want to start off with the key accessories. These are things that are going to make your life much easier, more comfortable. They are nice to have, but you can get away without having them. So I want to start off with those first. And many of you probably already have many of this stuff at home. So if you do, great. I would say probably 70 or 60% of people have these things. So you want to have some sort of bands. That is an accessory tool that you're going to need, especially for warming up or if you're kind of very, very weak to get started with exercise. So resistance bands. Now, what I mean by that is the big loop ones and the small loop ones. So the big ones, they're going to be like rubber elastic, like a big rubber band. The small looped ones are the ones that go around your knees. The more important ones is the big ones. So I want you to have those big loop ones. And by the way, all the items that I'm going to talk about today, I'll put them down below so that way you know what I'm referring to. And if you want to check those out, you can. But the big loop bands are super important. From there, if you have the smaller ones, that's fine. But honestly, not really needed. So that's the first accessory. The second one is one of those big pregnancy balls, like the big rubber balls. Those, just one of those, a large one, is great because you can do a lot of core work. You can do your hip thrust on it. You can do some balance work on it. It's a great tool to have, especially if you work from home. You can just sit on that thing and work your core while you are working. That's something that I do. That's something that was recommended. Even I did that in school, at work, whenever I could. I just sit on that thing and train my core, right? It's going to be way better for posture than just sitting on a chair. And then the last thing is the yoga mat. That's obviously a staple. Most people have one. You can get all of these for less than 20 bucks each. Okay. So if you had to buy all three of those, it'll probably turn out between 80 to 100. But you can definitely get it for cheaper depending on where you get it from. You can go to Five and Below and get many of these items. So The only thing I would say is to not skimp out on is the resistance bands because you want to make sure those are quality so they don't pop on you. But other than that, the pregnancy ball and the yoga mat, you can really get anywhere. Those are the accessories, like I said, nice to have. I would recommend having them, but not needed per se. If you're trying to go the cheapest way possible, you could get a workout with those three things. Um, so that's fine. Now, what I actually recommend to have that this is like your home gym should have is a kettlebell. You got to have two kettlebells, right? So a heavier kettlebell for your upper body and then a heavy kettlebell for your lower body. This is why I say two. So they're going to be different sizes. A kettlebell that's going to feel heavy for a row. So you're going to be doing just your standard row movement with the kettlebell. For, a woman, I'd say anywhere between 15 to 35 pounds, 25 pounds or so on the kettlebell. For a male starting out, I would say between 25 and 35 pounds. Okay. That is pretty standard of what most women and most men feel comfortable when they first grab a weight. Okay. That's going to be a weight that you're going to feel like, okay, this is kind of heavy, but still good enough for me to lift. So anywhere between 15 to 25 for female and then 25 to 35 pounds for male. That's a great starting point for upper body. Now, when it comes to legs, that's when your legs are bigger muscle groups. You should be able to lift more. It should be between 25 and 35 pounds for a female, and then 35 to 45 pounds for a male. Now, you will be able to lift more than that as you get stronger. The whole point is not to stay at that weight. You're going to need another kettlebell later on. But those two weights are a good place to get started with. So eventually you might need to have, for example, a 15, 25, 35, and 45, or a 25, 35, 45 pound kettlebell. Depends on what works best for you and your body. If I was to look at you and I was to see how much you're lifting weights for your lower and upper body, I'd probably say go on the upper range. So if you're stronger, you can go 25 and 35 pounds, or you can go 25 and 45 pounds. For me personally, for my wife and I ended up getting 25, 35, and a 45 pound to start with. We're going to probably need a 55-pound kettlebell, but that's going to be later on in the future. Right now, that's enough to get a good workout in at home. Because once you get past 55 pounds on a kettlebell, it just gets too bulky and it's hard to swing. So I don't ever recommend more than a 55-pound kettlebell. So that's just for the future. But in general, to start with, I digressed. Just two kettlebells between 15 and 35 pounds. In general, that's a good place to start. Now, you are going to need a dumbbell. Reason being is, could you technically do all your workouts with just a kettlebell? Yes. A lot of kettlebell and dumbbell workouts exercises overlap. However, especially when you're starting out, the kettlebell can be so bulky that it's going to make it hard to do certain exercises. So, for example, a bench press where you're laying down on the ground, your chest is facing up, and you press the weight above your chest, with the kettlebell is going to be uncomfortable on the wrist. Even if you can, for example, bench 60-pound, for example, dumbbells on a kettlebell, you might only be able to do 30 pounds. So if the most you can lift is 30 pounds on a kettlebell, you're going to need to have some dumbbells to make up for that exercise. Generally, I suggest having 18 pounds. So like I mentioned earlier, for my house, I did two 18-pound dumbbells. Two 18 or 20-pound dumbbells. You can go between 15 and 20-pound dumbbells. That's fine, but you want to make sure you have two of them. Then you got the kettlebell, which is going to be your heavier weight. And then you got your heaviest kettlebell. Those weights are going to be the best way to get you started with um, all upper and lower body movements. Now, if you are buying a 15-pound kettlebell, then I recommend you start about 5 pounds lower on your dumbbells, which would be like a 10 or an 8 or so. Generally, I would recommend an 8 just because it's not as heavy as 10. Those 2 pounds don't make a difference for your biceps, but it will make a difference for your shoulders. So that's why I generally say 8, so that way you can do a little bit more shoulder exercises with it. Especially for your shoulder presses, most women, 8 pounds is a great way to get started with and start doing. Um, the reason I start with 8 pounds, 8 to 10 pounds on a dumbbell is because most people already have those 2 or 3, 4 pounds lying around the house. Do I think it's needed to have those 2, 3, 4 pounds around the house? No. Reason being is because if you have an 8 pound dumbbell or even a 10 pound dumbbell and you hold it sideways, that's like basically holding 4 pounds. You're still holding 8 pounds total, but you're using both arms to lift 8 pounds instead of one arm to lift 8 pounds. So you can turn that dumbbell to the side, and it basically counts as half the weight, and it's going to be much easier on the body. So 2 kettlebells, one lighter, one heavier, 2 dumbbells of the same weight. And then I also recommend having a yoga pole. Now, do you need a yoga pole? You could use like a broomstick where you just take off the bottom part and use the broomstick. You can use a PVC pipe, something like that if you really want to get creative with it. I love a yoga stick because it has kind of like a flat end at the bottom. So if I'm using it for stability, I can put the flat end and it gives me a little bit more stable um, placement. So that way the pole doesn't slide when I'm using it for stability. So I like the yoga pole. This is basically going to be the best thing for your mobility. You're going to be able to grab the pole, put it behind the neck, right? Almost like if you're going to use it as a squat bar. You're going to get a good stretch on the shoulders. You can play around with the length of the bar as well, because the closer you are, the more stretch it feels on the front of the chest. The further you are, the less stretch you're going to feel. So it's a great exercise or a great tool for a lot of strength and mobility, especially mobility, which is it's a different form of strength training because you're almost strengthening the joints rather than the muscles themselves. But you are getting a little bit of that as well. So there's a lot of twisting that you can use with it. You can focus on balance work. You can use it for mobility. You can use it for stretching. There's a lot you can do with the pole. So I would like to have a balance pole. And what I recommend is with your workout, you superset a strengthening exercises, like for example, a kettlebell, and then you do a mobility exercise or flexibility exercise. Great combination to give you a little bit of rest between the two exercises. Okay. And then the last thing I recommend is a pull up bar. Now, if you can't do a pull up, that is absolutely fine. That is okay. I'm sorry, there is one more thing I recommend, but I forgot to mention that. But you do need a pull up bar because if you can't do a pull up just yet, that's okay. Part of it's going to be like a reminder of like, hey, you need to be able to do one. But besides that, you can tie the band at the pull up bar much easier, and you can do some ladder or some prayer pulls, which is what I call them, where you put your hips back, grab the band, and pull those hands down. You can do a tricep extension with the bands held onto the pull up bar. You can do some posture exercises where you're doing some A's or some W's, some Y's. Those are all posture exercises that you can do with the pull up bar, tying the band to it. You can do some chest flies. It's great for setting up your posture exercises before the workout. So a nice little posture exercises and warm up before the actual workout. So that's the main way I recommend using it. And then you can build up to doing your pull up, right? Now, what are you going to use to build up your pull up? It's called parlets. I don't know if I'm ever saying these right. Parlets or parallets or something like that. And they're basically like a calisthenics. It's almost like two large bars that you use to do dips on. You can use to stretch. You can use to do push-ups on. But more importantly, you're gonna use it to do some rows, what's called inverted rows, which is where you are facing upward. You hold the bars, and your hands are on top of your chest, completely extended, so all the way straight, and then you're pulling your upper body towards the two bars while your chest is up towards the ceiling. That exercise, the inverted row, oh my goodness, you are going to build tremendous strength with it. That is one of my favorite exercises to even help building up back strength, posture, and to help build you up to a pull up. Those are going to be incredible. There is one that you can get that you can bring them down as low as I think like 12 inches, which is a great place, and then as high as 35. So that's the one I recommend because you can bring them low to 12 inches or you can lift them up as 35. There is one that's just 30er, but it's only 35. And the benefit of the low is that when it's lower to the ground, you have a little bit more stability for doing like L sits and working on your hip flexors. So those are going to be very versatile to strengthen your hips and your core. Okay. So with all these, let's see, that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of equipment, not including the accessories. You're basically going to be able to target every single part of your body with it. And if you include obviously the yoga mat, that's really just for comfort. But if you include the pregnancy ball and the accessory bands, you're going to be able to do, or the resistance bands, you're going to be able to do even accessory workouts to help you get a good warm up in. So I do recommend having the resistance bands because they are helpful. But between the pregnancy ball, the yoga mat, and the, what did I say, 7 main pieces of equipment, you can work out shoulder press, dumbbell press. You can do a kettlebell swing, Turkish get ups, leg raises, which are phenomenal. You can do an ab rollout. You can do a plank, an elevated plank. You can work on your balance, your core stability, because with um, the lat pull down, you can tie the band and you can start doing some, I call them peel off presses, but I think some people call them pull off presses. I just think peel off is funnier. And that's great to train your core. You can do some wood choppers with that as well, where you grab the band and it's almost like you're trying to chop wood, pulling the band. That works your core standing up. So you're able to work your core standing up, on the ground, seated, which is phenomenal. And that's exactly how you want to start training your core from basically up, down, right? And then you can do some exercises that require stability because you have the yoga pole, and you can do some exercises that require balance. So for example, it's a lot easier to do a hip thrust with your back on the couch than it is to do the hip thrust with your back on the pregnancy ball. It's a lot easier to do a crunch on the ground than it is on the pregnancy ball. So it's going to be a great way to train and really push your body in small little ways to make sure you're building the body that you actually want. So those are my main pieces of equipment that I recommend for building an at-home gym. Now, I do have some what I like to call honorable mentions. These are not necessary, but it helps push your workouts just a little bit more. And if you have a little bit extra to spend, go for it. Why not? The first one is a treadmill, just one that you can put underneath your desk while you're working at home, and you can just walk and talk while you're in a Zoom meeting. You can just walk while you're getting some paperwork done. You can walk while you are watching TV. An at-home treadmill is an incredible piece of equipment. Just one of those that you can put on the ground. You don't need a big heavy setup. They're less than $100 or just about $100, and it's a great piece of equipment. You can get it with a railing so you can hold on to it, or you can get it without one. What I recommend is that you get one that does have an incline and elevation, at least between 3 and 6%. Ideally 6%, but if you can't get it, it's not that big of a deal. The only thing you want to make sure is that it's wide enough for you. Now, beyond the treadmill, which I think is a phenomenal piece of equipment just day to day, I do recommend the bench. The best one to do is always going to be one that is adjustable, but the cheapest one, and when I mean by cheap, I really mean affordable, that is going to help you get the job done is a just a regular Amazon bench. It's just a flat bench It gets the job done. It's sturdy. It's going to hold your weight, and you're going to be able to have some flexibility to do different exercises with it. And the last piece of equipment, not needed, but it is pretty popular right now. It is a weighted vest. So generally, you want to go at least 10% of your body weight for it. So you can do the math on that. That's how much weight you want to at least add on. Do you need more than that? No, 10% is a good starting point. And then if you want to add on more, you can. And with those pieces, you're really going to build a solid foundation. Really, this gym is going to last you if you train your workouts well enough where you are making each exercise harder as you go. This gym should last you 1 or 2 years before you need another piece of equipment, because the goal is to make the exercise harder. You don't necessarily need to add weight. Progressive overload can come from greater ranges of motion, more sets, more reps, slowing down the tempo, adding different leverages to your exercises, reducing stability. Those are all ways that you can make the exercises harder without having to spend more money. And this gives you a phenomenal home gym. I literally just bought most of these pieces for my house as well. I'm in an apartment. Yes, I have a gym, but it's great for somebody who doesn't like to either go downstairs or doesn't have the time or doesn't feel comfortable being in a public gym or is sick and can't really work out. Just having access to an at home gym, in my opinion, should be a priority, especially for 2026 if that is your goal to improve your overall health and well being. So, once again, I'm JC, clinical exercise physiologist and cancer exercise specialist. I'm going to do my best to put this down below if you want to check out the items so that way you know what I'm referring to. Other than that, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.